Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. Hope everyone's doing good. It is Sunday, 10:32. It's a pretty overcast, kind of rainy day. This weekend was the big All Roads Festival. We played at it last year with Quantum. It's hard to believe it was exactly a year ago. I played there last night with Electric Bonfire and got to hang out. It did rain on Saturday, which was a kind of a bummer, but it was fantastic. I got to see a lot of music this week, and I left a little early because the main venue that I was at was outdoors, and it started to get a little bit too wet and cold, and I was there already for quite a few hours, so I decided to leave anyway. And but it was pretty fantastic. So yeah, stay tuned. There's gonna be at the end of the month. There's a big quantum show coming up with a couple of friends, my friend Ronnie and Halsey. So I'll be doing a show on. Well, you'll be hearing me to talk a little bit more about it in the next couple weeks, and on social media there'll be a lot more. There'll be a lot of promotion coming your way, so stay tuned for that. So hope everyone's doing good. Um, so today's show is on a movie that I've been actually has been on the back burner for a really long time. It's been on my radar for a very long time. It's been a movie that really made me think of a few different actors in a very different light, and that is Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain. This movie, I think, is probably overall. It's always hard to say what's your top five or your top 10 kind of movie experiences. But I think The Fountain is probably, it came out in 2006 and it stars Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, directed by Darren Aronofsky, who, of course, kind of a legendary filmmaker. He's made so many great movies over the years: Requiem for a Dream, Pie, Black Swan, Noah. He's made so many great films. And this film, I think, The Fountain might be the most depressing movie I've ever seen. And I know just saying that alone could or can turn people away from ever wanting to see this movie. But I think it's one of the most, yeah, I think it's the most kind of depressing movie I've ever seen. But I don't know, it's Darren Aronofsky. I feel like he was, as a director, this came out quite a few years ago, but as a director, I feel like this movie was kind of a representation of him, kind of in his prime. Black Swan, of course, he directed that quite a few years later, which is an incredible movie with Natalie Portman. Amazing film, but I feel like The Fountain was right, in that, central area of where he made these iconic movies. Pie probably being his most important movie, and also Requiem for a Dream. This kind of came out after that, right? Well, around that period, but after. But I feel like he was, as a director, he was kind of at the height of his power. He's still, a filmmaker, still putting out movies. I feel like he hasn't, you know, I think he's, I don't know, I think maybe he has been off the mark lately, but he's still a very important filmmaker, a risk taker, without a doubt. He also made The Wrestler, which is a great movie with Mickey Rourke. But I don't know. I feel like again, I feel like he kind of has gone a little bit off that path that he has been on as a director. Very such an individualistic approach that he has to films. He, I mean, most of all of his films are very very serious, but they deal with a lot of heavy issues as far as death and life and isolation, addiction, darkness. His films typically are very very dark, and they typically kind of stick along the theme or ideas of a character's downfall, or their to a degree falling from grace, or losing yourself into to temptation to where it becomes obsessive. Psychologically, he deals with all of these things as a director and as a filmmaker, really at point blank. Very powerful filmmaker. The Fountain is a very unusual movie. I mean, he's always had elements. As a director, he has dealt with, you know, science fiction ideas and concepts. Also, he's always had elements of obviously horror in his films, drama, melodrama. The Fountain, I feel like, is definitely a very sci-fi based experience, and it's such an original. I think it's one of the most original films or concepts. The conceptual kind of approach to this film, what it is kind of off the charts. Like it kind of, I feel as a filmmaker, Aronofsky really took the kind of the medium of filmmaking into uncharted territories as far as the narrative, because it's essentially, this film is about this doctor played by Hugh Jackman. His wife, who is played by Rachel Weisz, has cancer, and she has terminal cancer, and it's him trying to cope with the idea of his wife dying, and his wife dies, and it's about his anguish that he goes through, and their deep connection, their love. But then he's also, he's on this quest philosophically, if you want to call it spiritually, but emotionally, he is trying to come to terms with what is happening and what is inevitable. And he's also, with in all of his power and his knowledge, being a doctor, trying to figure out a way to save his wife. So the film is told in these very surrealistic terms, of where there is a, like, kind of a past, a futuristic, and also this kind of outer dimensional concept of of his character trying to basically save his wife from perishing. And there's, within the narrative of the movie, there's like three different, almost short stories, or almost they almost act like theater pieces. They're almost plays, and it's a very, the story itself is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand, but it's the complex nature of dealing with grief that is really augmented in this film. And it's told, the narrative structure and the writing for this movie is so insanely original and so interesting. And it has this very, like I said, I feel like this movie is definitely a drama. It's very, very dark, but it's also very sci-fi based. There's a lot of interesting futuristic or futurist kind of concepts about mortality. And this movie was, before I saw this movie, I was pretty aware. I had seen Hugh Jackman before, obviously playing Wolverine in the X-Men, and I believe I had seen him in other movies, but pretty much up until the X-Men movie, especially the first one, when I came out in the late '90s. Now, that was, I believe, the first movie that I came across with Hugh Jackman was the first X-Men, as him playing the iconic Wolverine. Which, again, is an one of the best, Marvel movies. Um, and I thought, obviously Hugh Jackman was knocked it out of the park as Wolverine. Like, it's probably his most well known role that he's ever played in his long career. He's done, I mean, obviously he's done so many movies since then. and since the original, the debut of the X-Men franchise. But I have to say, when I saw The Fountain, I saw so many different sides to him as an actor, as well as Rachel Weisz. Because when I first heard of Rachel Weisz, she was, I think, the first movie I ever saw her in was the first Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser. A movie that does not, I don't think, ages well at all. It's kind of, it's an entertaining movie. It has very much like an Indiana Jones kind of a vibe, like the old school serial kind of way of storytelling, or in that genre. But the CGI is terrible. I don't think that movie really holds up very well. Not like the Indiana Jones films. But I believe that was probably, she was the lead in that, along with Brendan Fraser, and I believe that was the first movie I ever saw her in. And The Fountain was a movie that completely made me think of these actors in a different light. Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz. After, especially Hugh Jackman, where I was like, I did not recognize him in this movie. I was like, this is not the same guy who just played Wolverine. I After I saw the Fountain, I immediately was like, okay, I have to really pay attention to his career, because I was like, Hugh Jackman, because he plays. I mean, again, the story is pretty straightforward. It's essentially a love story, and it's about grief and dealing with, extreme despair. But it's so there's so many layers. The way it's told, again, like I said, it's very complex. There's so many colors to it, and it really was one of those pivotal movies where suddenly I was like, you know what, I really need to watch these actors and see what other work that they do, because suddenly I felt like, Hugh Jackman was in this uh, completely new league as an actor, and just as my own, for my own personal respect for him, I started to became a believer that someone like Hugh Jackman could do anything as an actor. I mean, and since then he's made some incredible movies, incredible films. Prisoners being one of his other films that I just think is amazing. It might be his best film. But again, it opened up this whole world for me, and as far as like respect and really admiring, and also just really admiring an actor or actress like Rachel Weisz, where they allow themselves as characters and as actors to be so utterly vulnerable on the big screen. The and that is one of the biggest strengths of the Fountain, is the level of, I feel like as actors they are completely vulnerable the entire, for the entire duration of this film, completely naked, and it's such an intimate portrayal of these two characters in total peril, and coming to terms with mortality. It's powerful, and the music. I saw this, The Fountain. I saw this when it came out on DVD. Pretty much after it had, I think it was in the theaters for a little while, and then I rented it a few times at Opera House Video, and then I bought this copy of The Fountain at, actually it's still got the label on, which is pretty funny, the Movie Gallery, which was another movie place that was in Belfast. That was a kind of a big franchise. Movie Gallery, of course, went totally out of business many years ago, probably like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I remember they had this giant sale. They were basically selling off all of their inventory, all of their movies. And I remember going there and I bought a shit ton of movies. And this was one of the movies that I bought that I was like, yes, I need to buy this. And I've watched this many, many times. But it's definitely one of the most intense movies I've ever seen. This movie will make me cry if I watch it. Like it's that powerful. The music in this movie is so powerful. It's one of the most powerful soundtracks. The whole the whole aesthetic of this film, the quality of it is it's just such a powerful movie. I've talked about this movie a lot to friends, and it's come up because most people do know who Darren Aronofsky is because of Pi and obviously most notably Requiem for a Dream, which is probably his most well known film. But most folks that I've talked to have never seen The Fountain, and I've always recommended it. It's a masterpiece. You know, it would be something that would be incredible because it's such a visual movie to buy and to see on Blu-ray. I've never seen it on Blu-ray. I'm sure it would be just insane. So definitely, at some point in the future, it would be very cool to check it out and to own it. I'm really happy with this DVD copy of it. I think it's pretty stellar. It's still amazing, but I can't recommend this movie enough. 2006, The Fountain. One of the best, one of the most, I think the most underrated film for Darren Aronofsky. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. But be prepared. It is get a box of Kleenex and be prepared to kind of melt into your chair if you watch this film. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.